Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, coming at you with kind of a new video with my friend Hiseki. How we doing, man?
Doing all right. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Ready to get every card on this list wrong. So I'm sure a fair bit of y'all have already seen this sort of video before. It's nothing new or revolutionary, mind-blowing either. It's some guy from X card game tries to guess cards from Y card game from knowledgeable friend. And it's exactly that. In this case, we've got kind of an interesting crossover. It's a Shadowverse and a Vanguard crossover. So not exactly the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hearthstone one you may have been seeing around or other stuff of that nature. But hey, we're going to have a fun time with it anyway. So give us a little bit of a rundown for more Vanguard players in the audience who don't really know like a Shadowverse. What is Shadowverse?
All right. So Shadowverse, it's been long running. Shadowverse is a digital card game developed by Zeiss Games, the same creators of Grand Blue Fantasy, or you may have also heard of Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, that's on the console. Those are all developed from Zeiss Games, and they actually also include a crossover of Grand Blue Fantasy and Shadowverse. But Shadowverse is primarily similar card game to Hearthstone. The only main difference is that they utilize a unique mechanic called evolution. And with evolution, in Shadowverse, every card that is a follower, which are your units that you utilize on the board, they have an evolution. What this does varies between different cards, but most of the time, it is a stat changer, and it's usually like a type of buff, and it activates different effects if those cards have set effects. But that is pretty much Shadowverse. It is an anime card game that you can find on mobile or on PC.
Go play it today. Oh, assuming you like this video, in which there's no accounting for the likes versus dislikes, right? Although, of course, YouTube decides that no one should be able to see dislikes. Fun. Anyway. So, yeah, just getting a bit into it, I only know some very rudimentary knowledge about Shadowverse. Didn't really play the actual DCG, but I did play the Shadowverse Evolved TCG a bit, although it was very readily apparent that it was not the same thing. Kind of similar, but not the same thing. So, yeah, when it comes to these cards, I don't really got much to go off of. I just know mechanically how they should probably work, but that's about it. So, let's get right into it. Okay.
Alrighty.
What do we got first?
So, as my specialty in being a sword main, we'll go with the first card being sword.
Yeah. If the first page didn't already tell it already, the first slide here already makes it similar. Yeah, he's a sword main. I'm a paladin main. Gang. Knights go burr.
Yes, sir.
Protagonists go burr, rather.
I'm very big into the knights or medieval times, so seeing sword aesthetic, I really enjoyed it, so I decided to pick it up, stuck with it, and it's been my main ever since I started.
Sick as hell. Alright, so we've got Barbarossa.
Yes,
so unevolved, which I guess means he's going to get an evolve, which we'll get into that in a second, but rush.
We'll get into that.
And last words, at the start of your next turn, put a Barbarossa into your hand. I'm going to say that this is like a DCG. It's not like from deck or whatever. It just conjures it into your hand. Change its cost to 8 if there are 2 enemy followers or less in play. Change its cost to 2 instead if there are 3 enemy followers or more in play. Ooh, it's got this pretty sweet flavor text. His beard, crimson like an inferno. His advance, furious like the flames. The people call him the red-bearded king. I wonder why. He is an immortal hero who aids an imperiled kingdom. Wow.
That is
Barbarossa.
Cool
more like Chad Barossa, man. What the hell?
Yeah. His art is also actually pretty cool. I like that he's leading the army there.
Yeah, very much what you would consider, and I get trait, swordcraft, legendary, all that stuff. I'm not really gonna be patient. I don't think that really matters too much.
Yeah, the traits we won't really go over. It's not gonna really change much unless we were talking about like deck synergy stuff. But we're not here to discuss about that. We're just here to discuss about your opinion on individual cards.
Yeah, that's fair.
That other stuff there, the traits, the class, the legendary, the rarities. I mean, those are just there for little decoration.
I feel that. You know, just completion.
Cool. Yeah.
Speaking of completion, Chad Barossa evolves into Chad Barossa EX. Oh man, it's him but more. Okay.
In this case, most cards just have a stat increase. So for Barbarossa here, he's getting a +2/+2 to his attack and defense. Attack being signified as the blue, and defense being as the red. Once a follower has reached 0 defense or less, they die.
All right,
and fair. For this case, I'll explain like the effects that he has, so then you have a better idea of what he does.
Yeah, what the frick is Rush?
Okay, so Rush, there are 2 forms of like things that are similar to like Rush, which is Rush itself, Storm. I have one of those in the slides, but we'll go over that once we get to it. But in this case, Rush means that this card can immediately attack another unit on the board or in play, basically, immediately once it's played.
Oh, because there's a summoning sickness thing. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh.
So when you summon a card, not all cards can immediately act. It's unless they have a specific term called either Rush or Storm that they could attack. Otherwise, if you're just playing it and they have an effect, then the effect just goes off usually. But in this case, he has another effect called Last Words. Last Words is an effect that is basically when the card dies, it activates, right? For him, it goes on to your turn, right? But it's at it's your next turn. So his effect doesn't actually activate. It's kind of delayed. But it does rely on what the opponent does. Because if the opponent decides to fill their board, then they get punished after killing Barbarossa. Because then he becomes a 2 cost. If they decide to actually be smart about it and only leave 2 followers or less in play, then he comes back at an 8 cost, which is pretty hefty. And that just hurts the opponent that's using Barbarossa. But it does stop the opponent that has to deal with Barbarossa from filling the board. So it's kind of like a mind game type of thing.
Well, okay, so let me just say straight up that looking at this from both the Vanguard and I also play a fair bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! Looking at it from both perspectives, Rush is a completely redundant effect that is basically like it's almost like the wheelchair kind of thing. Like, oh, you know, normally you don't get to attack, so it's almost like this card now finally gets to do what it's supposed to. But that's just from my perspective as other card games, so that's a bit that's a bit different. So I really like the Rush idea because I want my cards to act now, not tomorrow, not after breakfast, now. It's the last words though that's really the meat of this card, I'd imagine, right? So for a 5 cost, yes, he has okay stats. Like his stats seem like they're pretty commensurate with the 5 cost, and then when you evolve it, especially like, oh wow, okay, so he's pretty beefy. But so the last words that you call it a mind game, I'm going to guess that this card is not that great, and here's why. This card seems kind of speedy because of the Rush thing, but Rush, to my understanding, and Storm by comparison, they're not like that uncommon of a thing. Like you can see a fair bit of those cards, so that doesn't make it like some high-speed card. And then Last Words is sort of like not that good. And then you would think, oh well, if they have 3 or more followers, you know, then it gets to be 2. I look, unless you're playing against like another sword player where they're really gonna like have to hold back, and you'll just be like, whoa, slow your roll. I don't think that's that big of a deal, right? Because you have a lot of other crafts where you could probably not even need to spam the board that much. And even if you do make it a 2 cost, well then, yeah, okay, it'll make more of itself and come back. Maybe it comes down. But if you can just handle the Barbarossas every turn, then it doesn't matter regardless. So I'm going to just guess that Barbarossa is not that good. Am I right?
You want me to?
Am I right?
You my
What is
What?
it?
To tell you what it actually is used for?
Yeah, of
Or,
course.
like,
This is
if
the
it's good or
moment.
not?
This is the moment.
All right. It's bad.
It's bad. Yeah, got it. Oh, I saw it. I was like, this seems kind of slow and easy to counter. So, give a bit of an explanation here on like confirm exactly why is it bad.
Yeah. All right. So the reason why he's not that great, he's really niche and hardly sees any play. In fact, I think people just completely forgot who he was.
Chad Barossa or like who Barossa?
The only reason why some people may remember, and the reason why I remember, is because being a sword main, I pretty much know every sword card. Because I made it a goal for me to pretty much get every sword card. But let's see. The reason why he's not that great, especially because of his last words, it's very slow.
Yeah, it's very slow. For a card that has rush, he's really slow.
Yeah, and here's the other thing that has a major flaw with him, is that because the first time to play him is at 5, well, we should probably talk about what these numbers mean. So the cost, let me explain. In Shadowverse, to play cards, there is like a resource, resource supply called play points. These play points are obtained and utilized each turn for each player, and as each turn progresses, you get a maximum of +1 play point, unless you're a certain class. But we'll get over that later. But usually each class will get 1 play point each time they start up their turn again. Maximum play point. But every time when you start your turn, your play points are filled to the max, so then you can do your whole turn. So for Barbarossa, the cost changing is neat, but it is not that great. It sounds great, but in Shadowverse, a lot of the times, even if you manage to make your opponent play, multiple enemies at once, if they manage to fill the board with giant, cards anyway, then Barbarossa himself, you probably wouldn't even play him. He's just a dead card in your hand.
He's just a quote-unquote beater. It's like, woo, Barbarossa, because it's like, yeah, I get to play it for 2 cost and not impact the game.
Yeah, so every time, even if you manage to get him back and at his best state, which is 2 cost, right? You summon him, he's most likely just gonna die again. And even if he manages to survive by killing something, right? His HP or his defense isn't great. So he's gonna be killed on the opponent's turn. And then he comes back into your hand and he does essentially nothing besides just recycle into your hand.
It's like
and
this,
Yeah, right now it's way too slow because a lot of the times you want something more decisive as a high cost follower, especially for sword. The sword specializes mainly in filling the board with low cost units and then buffing them.
But then you have
that is generally the tactic.
So, oh man, I'm sorry, buddy. Like you're cool, and I guess your rush is kind of neat. So you know what? You get 1, buddy. You get 1. Okay.
Yeah, essentially, he's not that great.
Ah, man, and I liked him too. Oh, but I knew it too.
He's a very
I smelled
cool
it.
Guy. His artwork is nice. His flavor text, awesome. But unfortunately, his effect is not the greatest. His stats aren't also the greatest. Oh, I should probably also mention, when you're going first or second, you can't immediately evolve cards. You have to wait until a certain turn, which is, if you're going first, once you've hit turn 5, then you can evolve. And that's usually when you have enough play points to play said Barbarossa. So you could actually call him and then immediately evolve him.
But why would you?
Well, why would you? That doesn't really do much. So it's pretty much a bad turn.
I'm so sorry, Barbarossa. You know what, buddy? I love what you could have been. All right, so who do we got next on the docket?
here's what we got next is another class called Havencraft.
Oh, Jesus, look at this dude. This is some, what was his name? Like Zendata or whatever from Overwatch, the Buddhist guy who would fire like prayer beads at you.
I haven't played Overwatch, so I'm not exactly sure.
I forget his ass, but he's like that, but a horrifying alien version. You know, this is like that dude, but sicko mode. Unevolved. Does this have an evolution?
It does, but we'll get to that.
Nice. All right. Crystallize. 1. Countdown. Then. What the frick is that?
Okay, let me explain to you what these mean. So, Crystallize is a special mechanic in Shadowverse where you can play a card early. But in this case, because Crystallize is coming off of this card called God of Curses, his original cost you can see is 6, correct?
Yeah.
And from Crystallize, you can see the number next to it, which is 1. This means that he can be played early, but there's a catch. In order for this card to activate, right, there is a countdown feature, which is where Crystallize turns this follower card into an amulet. So it's not a follower. And amulet cards are placed onto the board just like followers, but they cannot be acted upon. You can't really utilize them in the same way as a follower, like to attack the leader, right? They're more so used kind of like it's like a little totem type thing, if you understand what I mean by that.
Okay.
So most amulets which have countdown in their term, right? It is a thing that counts down.
Oh, is it now? Huh. Go figure.
Now, you can see that the countdown is 10. That's quite long. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But due to his effect when being crystallized as an amulet, whenever you play another amulet, you subtract 1 from this amulet's countdown. Right? And amulets also can have last words. So when this amulet is finished counting down, it activates its last words and then the amulet disappears. And in this case, it'll just automatically summon a God of Curses. Now, we can look at his evil.
Hey, Sheen. Oh, he's blue now.
Yes, sir. Now, you can see that.
Wait, he has no attack?
Yeah.
Okay, so
let's no attack.
What's Ambush and Bane? What are these?
Okay. Let me explain. So Ambush is another mechanic in Shadowverse where if a character has ambush, unless specified, it is a thing where your card, well, this card in this case, cannot be attacked nor targeted by spells.
Okay.
And it is only until this card either does damage somehow from its own effect, or it attacks, that the ambush is removed, and then he's vulnerable to being attacked or hit with a spell or something like that.
Okay, so he's basically untargetable by attacks and effects, just to use it in a sort of a Yu-Gi-Oh term, I guess cannot be chosen for attacks or effects to use the Vanguard term of it.
So what ambush is basically they're hidden from the enemy eyes, but what it basically does is that nothing can be done to it unless you have something that either hits the entire board or has something that hits a random target.
Oh, so he's in stealth then. He's basically in stealth.
Yeah, he's basically in stealth.
Okay.
That's what ambush is. And
what about Bane?
For Bane is basically it's an insta-kill. So any follower that touches unless they say they can't be destroyed by effects, they will always die. They will always be destroyed if a follower has Bane. Because all Bane does is it only insta-kills followers. It does not insta-kill the opponent. It does not work like that.
Oh, thank God. So if something attacks it or he attacks that thing, then they're going to die.
Bane applies to any time he is attacking or attacked. So let's say you attacked it with a follower, right? Your follower will die.
Okay.
And if he attacks your follower from his turn, your follower will die. Because Bane is just pretty simple in the fact that it's just an insta-kill for whatever it touches. So it's just meant to be like a control option. But he can't use it really like offensively to hurt your life points directly because he has no attack.
Yeah, now no need to tell me those kind of things because you're just giving a bit more information than you need there, buddy. I gotta be the one to make assumptions here. And of course the effect, okay, at the end of your turn, reduce the enemy's leader maximum defense by 4. Well, okay. So I actually have a question about that. Does this turn off ambush?
No.
Because it's not attacking it. It's not actually dealing damage. Oh, that's a shenanigan.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good then. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it straight up. This is probably like an entire deck strategy for Havencraft. It's like probably a revolutionary aspect that made its own deck. And oh man, yeah, this to me seems busted because it's basically a non-interactable way to just hurt your opponent every turn, on top of being able to get more God of Curses from the regular form, and on top of that, even if you can get it out of hiding, quote unquote, then it's got Bane active. It does so much, and they're all good effects. How would this not be good? So tell me, oh wise one, am I on the money? Is this a really, really strong card?
I'm going to actually give you half points for that.
Oh.
So, in itself, it's really just a case if your opponent has a way of dealing with it. And that's just more of like a matchup type of thing in this case. Because nowadays in Shadowverse, a lot of people have a lot of cards that just either would just deal damage to a random enemy, and if he happens to just be the only target or follower on your board, if you're playing God of Curses, right, then he will get hit. And most of the time, it's just like a destroy a random enemy follower type of thing. Those cards are pretty, they've become more popular now because Shadowverse has just been pumping them out to deal with cards like this.
Okay. So there's counterplay, but if it isn't there.
But it does depend on whether the deck or the person decides to run it or not. Sometimes it doesn't have to be something specific, like you have to get a certain spell that deals with something like this. Sometimes just people will just have cards where their like staple cards already have an effect to deal with stuff like this. So it's not always something that you have to sacrifice for. Some classes are better at dealing with these type of cards, but in this case, this card is good, but you wouldn't run like 3 copies of it.
Oh,
nowadays.
Okay. Gotcha. It's not like the center point of a deck strategy.
Yeah. You can do it, however, if you want to focus on reducing an enemy leader's maximum defense. I've seen it before. It's pretty effective, but for God of Curses, you notice that he still, even despite having a crystallized 1 and then spamming amulets, right?
Right.
These amulets cannot be like, they can't be attacked, right? They can still be targeted by spells. So if somebody has a way of removing these amulets, and then it's an issue. But for God of Curses, if somebody decides to destroy the amulet, it actually activates his last words. So a person who is up against the God of Curses that is crystallized, you wouldn't want to destroy the amulet, right? Your focus would be, in this case, is to rush
Let's
the person
go
and basically kill them faster before they can do anything, right? And sometimes, actually, in this current meta, this would actually be kind of too slow. I still see it in play, but it's like they run 1 copy, and it's only because it's just like it's like an option type.
It's a tech card.
Yeah, it's a tech card, basically.
All right.
You wouldn't really rely on this guy, because even if you, say, reduce the enemy leader's maximum defense, it sounds really good. A lot of people don't have ways of countering this, But there do exist cards that just increase somebody's maximum defense.
Oh,
And
okay.
just to state, to show how much of an effect this has, everybody that starts in a game of Shadowverse has a maximum of 20 HP. So, if you wanted God of Curses to basically just, I don't know, reduce your HP down to 0, you'd have to wait a while.
You have to get that going 5 times.
Yeah, and basically hope that you survive 5 times if you want to do it that way. Or have a way of killing them when they're at, like, I don't know, let's say 12 HP, right? That's a pretty low number. Well, you gotta hope that you have to just end the game before they end you.
Yeah, I do like that God of Curses, though, and I can see why it's a tech card, because you don't really need to run more God of Curses when Last Word summons a God of Curses, and you can give your leader the following ability to give the God of Curses and evolve it. So it's like, when you play this, it's very low management. It sort of does its own thing, and if it helps you out, great. If it does you to, like, that's not that sad. You didn't lose too much for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just it's like a little bonus in a deck, but you wouldn't really try and focus around it because it's too slow to be a win condition type of thing.
Ugh, the words of the great Reen Coldsteel. Too slow.
It's unfortunate as well because this is actually a card from one of the anime protagonists.
Okay.
And it's like his main card too.
Oh man. Okay, so it's got protagonist points.
Yeah.
No wonder. Fine. All right. Sure. Man, God of Curses. I like you, buddy. Man, I didn't even like.
It's a pretty cool card.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but it's not like insanely good. So.
Just to quote his favorite text, it must be so fun for you. All right. So what do we got next?
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Hey, is this Bloodcraft? This is Blood. Okay, so Bloodcraft is actually one of the ones that I'm a little bit more acquainted with. So this won't require too much explanation, thankfully. So we got Parasolise, Demon of Greed. Greed is good. So unevolved, which I guess means there's an evolution. So unevolved. If this card is discarded, easy. Put 2 Parasolise Demon of Greeds into your deck. Ooh, I like that decking out. Invocation. At the start of your turn, if you have 0 cards in your hand, evoke this card. Explain.
So invocation or invoke is basically a condition to call a card from your deck. Once that condition is filled, it will activate. Yeah, it's just basically a call from the deck, so you can play it.
Oh, and just so invocation. So is this invocation? Where does this activate? Does this activate on the field? This invocation activates, or like from the deck?
So it activates from the deck at the start of your turn. So if as long as you fulfill the conditions of having 0 cards in your hand, so then it gets played. This card immediately gets played onto the field at no cost besides the condition that you have here.
Oh, wow, okay. When this follower comes into play, deal 2 damage to the enemy leader, restore 2 defense to your leader, and draw a card. Yeah, that's very blood. Okay. Then it's got... This is looking pretty sexy so far, artwork not included. I like that its trait is festive, by the way. Our philosophy is the shake old system. I like how it's funny, this flavor text. In exchange for your life, enjoy your first and final taste of included pleasure. I'm like, oh, hey. How many of you out there would take that exchange? So it's got an evolve. What do we got here? Woo, okay. So it's like a Parasolise, but more. Okay, let's see. Evolve, discard 3 random cards, deal 5 damage to an enemy. Oh! Oh, that's so messed up. You can just discard other Parasolise, and then you can put in more in the deck, and then they invoke themselves out at the beginning of the turn.
Let me just state, it only evokes 1 at a time. It does not evoke all at once.
Oh. Oh. Well.
So there is a cap to doing it.
Oh, well. I mean, it's still
you can
a cool
keep
card.
cycling it until your opponent dies.
Huh. And just to review, it has an effect that when it comes into play, it shields you damage to enemy later, restore to your and draw. That's a free draw and body on board, like basically every turn as long as you keep going. Yeah, this card is very good. This card just has to be good. Essentially, what you've done here, just to look at like it from the Vanguard thing, you've essentially created a system where you always get to call a card, dealing damage to the opponent's Vanguard, and draw. And this is all for free as long as you've used up your entire hand, which, unlike Vanguard, where you use cards from your hand to guard, in this game, in this deck, you don't really do that. You could just discard them to keep your combos going. I would imagine that this is where the Yu-Gi-Oh side of things come in, because there's a card called Into the Void, and also a card called Card of Demise. And what those do is, they'll give you a lot of draw power and stuff, but then at the end of the turn, you're gonna have to get rid of your entire hand. But Yu-Gi-Oh is such a combo based game that you can just get rid of that hand and be okay with it. Set some back row, call a couple units, discard them, what have you. You could get rid of that. And I think Shadowverse is kind of the same way. You could get rid of that. I mean, hell, you just get rid of it with the Evolve, for crying out loud. So tell me, oh wise one, I'm just gonna guess. This card is really good.
Guess correct.
Yeah, it's so busted. What the hell is happening? Why does Blood have this?
Is actually, well, at least last expansion, I can confirm that it was top meta.
Man, dude.
This was one of the most played deck archetypes of, it's called Handless Blood.
Okay.
Basically, all you do is get rid of your hand as fast as possible.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wonderful.
It is a very aggressive early game deck. Most of the time. Even control decks have a difficulty dealing with it because it's just way too fast. And when this comes into play, it just starts... And the opponent keeps getting healed, they keep getting more cards to play. And most of those cards just have quick effects that just instantly either deal damage to your face or just get rid of whatever followers you have on your board.
Truly.
But if you're also playing a slow deck, then it's just your worst nightmare, because you have to somehow survive against this before they just delete your HP.
As Blood loves to do.
Yeah, and usually what Bloodcraft is, they like hurting themselves in order to gain benefits from it. So they're a high risk, high reward type of class. Generally, they are probably the most difficult class to play because you have to manage your HP. And your HP, once you drop to 0, that's game, or less than 0, that's still game. But
can you imagine? It has to be exact number.
Yeah, but basically, in a way, it's great because for Bloodcraft, they have a special mechanic called Vengeance, which is only active when they're at 10 HP or less. Now, through this meta now, there are cards that just their own, but in this case, we're not talking about that archetype because that's a different deck of itself, which is basically just Vengeance Blood.
Okay.
For this one, this is just Handless Blood, which their deck would just compromise of low-cost cards, so then you can spam and get rid of your entire hand really quickly, right? And you would just oppress the opponent, right? And just get rid of their HP. That's your own... It's basically just face.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's all face.
Face wins the race.
Yeah.
I just to throw in some outside perspective here, I imagine that the way you've been describing how this card is played, there is a keyword in Vanguard, right? Vanguard has keywords, but they don't have those anymore, but they had them for the G era. And so of course, when you're playing Premium, which is sort of like the unlimited format that you would have in Shadowverse, so you get to play all the cards essentially. You can still use those keyword cards. Now for Royal Paladin, yes, funnily enough, it's a Paladin. For Royal Paladin, they had a thing called Brave. Now Brave, you get to use those effects as long as you had 3 or less cards in your hand. So of course you would use up your cards really quickly. But the idea here is they would have such rampant multi-attack that it did not matter they had no hand. They would try to kill you so freaking quickly. And on top of that, they had small advantage edges because they are a paladin deck, so they'll get like cards to the field and whatnot that they would still be able to somehow maintain themselves and the game state despite having such a low hand perpetually due to their keyword. And so this card is very much like that. You know, you rush with it and it'll get you draws so that even though you want to have no cards in your hand, you could still use cards, right? You can still have some stuff to do every turn. So yeah, it's very threatening. I mean, for perspective, Brave got hit on the ban list at one point. They got one of their strides and stuff. So Brave was one of the most prevalent OTK decks of its era. It was incredible.
Yeah.
That is insane. Wow, okay. Parasolise, she's pretty big.